guys, this is Ryan and Chad here from CNR Reviews, and we have a video here that's been a long time coming. This has been about 6 or 7 months, maybe 8 months, and we've had a few questions on our channel about how this particular thing has performed. And the thing I'm talking about is the brass stacker scout scope mount for the Mosin Nagant 9130. Chad picked this up for me for my birthday, and it cost about $65. And the whole point of this thing is to be able to mount a scope on the Mosin Nagant to take it out to the farther ranges, 300-400 yards, and be accurate with it without permanently modifying the weapon. So, because you'll see guys try to drill and tap the receiver up here and mount a rail on that, get a bent bolt here, or get the bolt that they have bent, and then mount a big, huge scope on this thing. And then they'll be able to take it out, to even farther, maybe 500-600 yards.
The issue being, guys, is that these guns are so cheap. When you do setups like that, or you end up buying these really expensive scopes, you're taking this little $90 gun and turning it into a $500 rifle when you could just have gone out and bought a modern rifle for the same price.
Yeah. So that again is the purpose of this mount here. And again, like I said, it costs around $60, $65, somewhere around there. Now, because of the rifle only, I believe this rifle actually cost us only about $100. We didn't want to go super expensive with a scope either. We didn't want to go and spend $400 or $500 on a Burris pistol scope. That doesn't really make sense. Or
$300 on a Weaver.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense unless you have something like that hanging around that you're really not using, that you can put on this rifle, and then you're not losing anything. You're gaining something because you're using something that's been sitting around. Anyway, so we tried a couple different scopes here. How this thing mounts, particularly on the Mosin Nagant, is, first of all, to even make sure that your Mosin will be able to use this mount, you got to make sure that your rear sight block here has 2 pins on the bottom. 3 if you're counting the pin that holds in the actual iron sight. So you need to have 2 pins at the bottom there. Some of the Mosins don't have them because they would just pin one, I believe it was this one, and they would solder on these sight blocks. So not all of them have them, so you need to make sure. This one had it, and it was a round receiver, high wall, not a real sought after expensive one, so we decided to modify it as much as we wanted to. And we punched out the pins. They just happened to break, so that's why I still have the screws holding the sight block in. Because those pins, they're really tight in there, and they're old, guys. I mean, some of these rifles are 70, 80 years old, so that metal can get brittle sometimes. But regardless, you slide this over that sight block and
screw it down.
And you just put your screws in and you bolt them down. And it's supposed to let you still use your iron sights, and that's a really cool feature. We actually have an installation video, I believe, on our channel. If you guys want to actually see us install this on a Mosin Nagant. But being able to use your iron sights makes the mount really, really high, or they had to make the mount really high to give that feature for you. So you're already with a scope that's pretty high. Then to be able to mount a scope like this, where it's not like a straight pistol scope here, this is a little bit different type of pistol scope. This is a 2 to 7 by 32 millimeter. And if you guys notice, the front part of the scope here actually dips beneath the rail. Now, I've modified this brass stacker, and I will tell you guys why. I'm pretty sure you guys have already figured it out. The rail is supposed to be the same size on both sides. I first mounted an AIM scope that I bought off of Amazon.com. And it wasn't the brass stacker's fault that the scope sucked. it would not adjust enough because I had to put it on high rings. The scope would not adjust enough to actually get on paper. I was still shooting really, really, really low with the rifle, and it just wasn't the right setup. So I ended up buying a little bit more expensive scope, a BSA Edge scope, and this scope actually cost me, I believe, around $80. So almost as much as the rifle costs, which I thought was a fair deal. You know, hey, let's put something a little bit better quality on this mount to see if it works. And then I went with a little bit lower ring, and I noticed something. I noticed that this was riding directly on the rail, and it wasn't working real well. I don't know if you guys can see that there. It was sitting directly on the rail, and I had a guy come up to me and go, "You know, that's not good for the scope. You need to, like, you really need to figure something else out." And so I started thinking here, I'm not going to be mounting anything on the front of this rail, so why don't I just cut it off? And I took my Dremel and I cut it off, and then I blued it a little bit, and it turned out just fine. I was able to mount the scope without it touching, and so it's not gonna hinder the scope at all. And then I put it back on the rifle, and I started shooting with it. And guys, the groups I was getting out of the Scout Scope setup with the brass stacker was about 5 to 6 inches at 100 yards. If you guys watch our 100-yard Mosin accuracy video with iron sights, I get a group about 4 to 5, maybe 6 inches at most with the iron sights. The whole point of this setup is to be able to make this gun shoot more accurate at farther ranges. So what's the point of it if it doesn't tighten those groups up? So we actually ended up taking it off of the rifle and replacing it with a different type of sight, just because we couldn't make this setup specifically work, and we weren't willing to spend any more money on any other scopes.
So guys, let's go ahead and let's talk about the quality of the brass stacker itself. Now the quality of the rail and the piece itself is actually great. It's got a little bit of weight to it, it's got some heft. You can definitely tell that some thought's been put into it. And like Ryan was saying, it's a very nice alternative instead of having to tap your receiver. The issue with it is Ryan has had to replace the screws how many times?
At least 3 or 4 times.
The screws that come with it suck.
The screws that come with it will strip out, guys. They're very, very soft metal. And this is a pretty high recoil rifle. If you guys have ever shot a Mosin nagant, I mean, it's going to hurt your shoulder if you don't tuck it in real tight.
It's going to kick a little bit more than a 308.
And so these screws have to hold up to a pretty heavy recoil, and they take a beating. Now, you are supposed to Loctite them down, but even with blue Loctite, I still had to tighten them up every now and again. And that was something that just that repeated tightening down and trying to get as tight as I can without stripping them out. It was a razor's edge there of, okay, it's tight enough, but can I tighten it a little bit more without it actually stripping out? And there was a couple times where I stripped them out, had to run to the hardware store and picked up some longer screws and fit them to it, or they just slid right in, replaced the nut, and away we went on it. But that's why they're not black.
Yeah. So guys, so as far as the quality goes, it's okay. It's not a bad quality item.
The mount itself is very good quality, but the screws suck.
Yeah, I mean the screw setup and pin setup leave something to be desired. The issue, guys, is that if you're going to run this type of setup, if you watch other people's videos, let's say Nut and Fancy's video on the brass stacker, he will talk about how he ended up putting a Weaver scope on there. And that means you're going to end up kind of pricing yourself into a higher range scope. You're looking at $250, $300 or more as you start to get into the more expensive pistol scopes. And if that's what it takes to get this gun accurate, to me it's not worth it. I would rather say save the money on the brass stacker, save the money on the scope, maybe go out and purchase a Mojo sight, which is what Ryan has on there right now. That has actually been pretty fun to shoot with as far as accuracy goes. It's no more accurate than the Scout setup, and the Scout setup is no more accurate than the Mojo sight. We're getting around the same groupings.
Actually, I'm a little bit tighter with the Mojo sight than I was.
And you know what? I mean, as far as taking out the gun to further distances, unfortunately, unless we tap the receiver, do the bent bolt, as of right now, we're not going to be able to do it. So we've had a lot of people comment on the setup. You guys have seen first impression videos of the brass stacker. You've seen this installation video, us shooting it at the range. And we've had a lot of people say, hey, I bought it and it worked for me. So the question is how?
And we feel bad for the people that kind of, well, they bought it before we came out with the review on it. And we kind of feel bad for them because we don't, it didn't work for us. So if it didn't work for them and then now they blame us, that really sucks.
Yeah. But if it did work for you, we want to know. Please let us know, guys, if you are running the Edge, maybe you are running the aim scope that Ryan didn't really care for. Maybe it's working great for you and you're seeing improved groupings. Unfortunately, we are not. So as far as the brass stacker goes, we're not going to be able to say, go out and buy this and it's going to solve your accuracy issues with the Mosin nagant. The biggest benefit, if you want to improve accuracy on the Mosin nagant, you want to spend the extra money, go spend it on a custom trigger. Do something else like that, because as it goes right now, even with the Scout setup, the only thing that's useful is being able to see a little bit farther, and that's it.
Yeah, and honestly,
and to have crosshairs.
Yeah, honestly, the groups did not improve for either one of us shooting this rifle with that Scout scope setup.
Yeah, and it was extremely hard to actually even get the scopes to dial in. I understand they have certain MOAs and stuff, but it lifts the gun up so high off of. Lifts the scope so high off the gun that the scope is basically maxed out to get it to even hit paper.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, guys, it didn't work for us. But like I said, let us know if it's working for you. We really want to know. Ryan would love to be able to try it again and get great groups.
Yeah, tell me a scope. If it's worked for you, tell me a scope that you used, and I'll see if maybe I can sell this one or something to somebody that has a pistol that it'll work for, and then maybe spend some extra money on a good scope. So yeah, let us know, guys. If you have any questions on the brass stacker mount, let us know and we will try to answer those. Check out our channel. We have well over 400 videos on there of all different types of firearms and knives and accessories and a whole bunch of good stuff. This is Ryan and Chad, CNR Reviews. Thanks for watching, guys.